The Ducks defense is soon to be saved. Hallelujah! The defense will be saved in about 2 to 3 years. Yeah. That's coming up on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez. Been covering hockey for over a decade. Thanks for tuning in every day. Thanks for being an everydayer if you are. That is awesome. And yeah, let's just get started right away. Twitter, StimpyJD. Show's Twitter, LO_Ducks. All right, so let's get into it because we got a short one today. I said at the front, the Ducks defense is going to be saved. And yes, it is going to be saved, ... in a couple of years. Well, that's because the Ducks defense is doing well in juniors. They're not doing particularly well in the major league level, which, is a thing that happened. This was historically bad. Yeah, that's what happened. But what about the up-and-coming defensemen, the ones that are killing it right now in juniors? Because the Ducks, as of this moment, have not one, not two, but three defensive prospects that are still in the playoffs as of this recording. There is one that just got eliminated in juniors. So actually, let's start with that one first, because he was the most recent draft pick for the Anaheim Ducks, and that's Pavel Mintyukov, whose Ottawa 67s just got eliminated from the Ontario Hockey League playoffs at the hands of the Peterborough Petes. Yes, Mason McTavish's old team, his first one. Minty had a solid series. In fact, Mintyukov has looked pretty solid throughout this season, throughout these playoffs, and that's what you want. And now that I finally take the time to watch a couple of his games, I've noticed one thing that I really like about Mintyukov's game is his ability to know where the puck is going and anticipating, passes across the Royal Road, anticipating crosses that are about to get into the zone. Mintyukov has a very good active stick and a pretty solid IQ player, if I might add. And this is someone that you want on the Ducks. You want someone that is going to prevent easy zone entries, something that he has been pretty solid at from the games that I've seen, and something that he was pretty good at earlier in this season. So if you want to talk about a good player that has, good skating skills, good hockey IQ, and is aggressive at keeping the puck out of the offensive zone, then that's absolutely what you want if you're the Anaheim Ducks. Now, Mintyukov is still maybe a year or two away from getting in the NHL. I think he still needs a little bit of development. I think one aspect of his game that I would like to see him work on just a little bit is not getting beat easily and not taking too many chances on those 50-50 pucks. And, that's something that gets worked on. You work on that in the summer. You work on your skating. You work on your stick. You work on making sure that your crossovers are good. So he's still got a little bit of time to develop. Mintyukov is only 18, 19. I give him one more year in juniors. Let him completely dominate like another certain defenseman that I'm going to talk about in the second part of the show. But Mintyukov right now, some would say that he is still a raw talent. And I would actually kind of agree with that assessment, that he is still a raw talent. In 2 years, I could see him very easily making the Anaheim Ducks squad. Next season, I think he might stay in juniors next season, Mintyukov, as of right now. I mean, he did play with the Saginaw Spirit earlier this season, got traded to the Ottawa 67s for a few draft picks, but he is that good. And Mintyukov just entered almost his final season. He's got one more season of eligibility left in juniors. Might he just try to make the Ducks right now? He might, because he's going to turn 20 next year. Even so, He's still very good. Will he make the Ducks next season? That's tough to say. That's tough to say because you're already going to have a bevy of depth defensemen. And Mintyukov was the one player that I was kind of on the fence about before these playoffs. And before saying maybe. I'm not saying there's a big log jam on defense. But yeah, I just feel like there's one more year. One more year for Mintyukov. Let him dominate. Or he could try to make the team outright, and he would be making this. And actually, he wouldn't, because he would have one more year in juniors left to be eligible. So he would have to start off either in juniors or in the Ducks. He might have the year in juniors, but I could see him easily being a black ace for the San Diego Gulls next season. So we're talking the 23-24 season with McIlvaine at the helm. And that might be the best move for Mintyukov, because you want that kind of coach in San Diego that can really build up defensemen and build up those little things. That's what you want eventually. So I'm thinking more long-term here. I'm not really thinking about next season, because the Ducks were so bad. They were so astronomically bad this season that it's going to take another year or two for the Ducks to get back into the playoffs. I mean, just my own thinking right now, I don't know if the Ducks make the playoffs next season. I kind of doubt it. But work towards the long term. Next year, I don't see him making it, but in 2 years, with the defense developing as much as I would hope they are, yes, I could see the Ducks making the playoffs in 2 years. So watch out, Anaheim Ducks 2025 playoffs. All right, we're going to head into the first intermission and talk about that certain other defenseman. I think y'all are smart enough to know who I'm going to talk about in this next segment. So we'll get to that on the other side. But first, I want to talk to you guys about eBay Motors. For a championship team not like the Ducks, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know where the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available in the USA. Exclusions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez. Let's talk about that other player. Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Y'all know who it is. I think he could make the Ducks next season. And he's still going. Olin Zellweger, who I am still, to this day, a little bit upset at Joel Bouchard. Yeah, it's going to be hard to let that one go, because I watched this happen in real time. I saw this happen in person, seeing how the Gulls had a chance to push the Reign to a Game 3 in the previous season's AHL playoffs, and you bench him after he scored a point. You bench him? Ay. Anyway, Olin Zellweger is crushing it in juniors this season. Absolutely crushing it. When you are a player that gets traded for 10 picks, yes, you heard that right, 10 picks, you're pretty good. And Olin Zellweger, in last season's Calder Cup playoffs, he got a point in Game 1 of that series. He got an assist, and then he got benched the rest of the series. Why? Why did that happen? So you know what? He proved to everyone else, oh, you're going to treat me like this? I'll show you. And you know what he did the other night, last week? 7 points in a game. That breaks a WHL playoffs record for most points by a defenseman. in a playoff game. 7 points, 3 goals, 4 assists, taking out the Portland Winterhawks. Kamloops is looking very solid right now. And I know that a lot of it has to do with Olin Zellweger. Look, I'm not so blind to see how good Zellweger has been this season. For Kamloops, 52 points in 32 games. But overall, 80 points in 55 games would be good for any player. But for a defenseman, that's exceptional. Olin Zellweger might just be one of the steals of that draft. The way it's looking right now, I mean, did anybody expect him to dominate at this level with this kind of pace? I expected him to have a big season. I'll admit, going into this year, I expected over a point a game, maybe like a 60-something point in 50-something games pace. But 80, did not see that coming. This from a second round pick. Yeah, I see you, Ducks fans. I see you salivating right now going, oh, just put him on the team already. I mean, look, first off, I love Olin Zellweger, not just because we share a birthday, but because I have liked every aspect of his game this season. I thought he was solid during that game with the Gulls in last year's playoffs. He was solid. He was good. This season, he's taken it to a whole other level. And he will not be in juniors next year. Absolutely not. He has dominated way too much at this level in only 8 games. 8 games, 21 points. That is almost an average of 3 points per game, which would be amazing as a forward. As a defenseman, oh boy, these are record numbers, folks. Not often do you see a player this touted going into the trade deadline in the WHL. Not often that you see a player this touted going into the playoffs. I could see him playing into June. Kamloops could very well have a deep run in the Memorial Cup this season. He might lift the Memorial Cup this season. He might. It could be someone from the Quebec League. It could be another Ducks prospect out there. You never know. But Zellweger right now is just absolutely throttling everybody. And these are smart plays too. A couple of those apples were just nice kind of flick of the wrist, look for your teammates, eyes behind your head kind of assists. This is something special. Defensively, he's good. He's fine defensively. But you talk about his offensive game as a defenseman, and it is better right now than maybe half the defensemen in the National Hockey League right now. Right now! His ability is better than half the defensemen in the National Hockey League, and that is saying a lot. Certainly better than John Klingberg. Yes, I said it. Better than John Klingberg. Except you have a better defense and a much better offensive game. And that's something the Ducks will need. They need someone with that kind of scoring touch and at least improved defense. If Zellweger can get a decent amount of blocked shots and at least improve the defense marginally, then yes, you're not going to allow as many goals. But more importantly, you're finally going to score and have that kind of secondary person on the power play. And I've seen Kamloops' power play this season. It has been unstoppable so far this playoff. That's someone else that you want. I mean, if the Ducks are going to insist, well, I mean, I don't know. I got to be careful what I say here. Because Dallas Eakins definitely insisted on having 2 defensemen on the power play several times this season. So if the Ducks really want to keep that up and have 2 defensemen on the power play, you know what? I wouldn't mind it if it was Jamie Drysdale and Olin Zellweger both on the power play. I wouldn't mind that because we both know, like we all know, that they both can score on the power play. We know that. And I think whoever the next coach of the Ducks is going to be is going to have to realize that, and realize that quickly. I mean, on paper, you look at this roster and go, wow, this team should have done better. And they really should have. So this gives me a lot of hope. I cannot wait to see what Kamloops does the rest of this WHL playoffs. And, you know, like I said, Olin Zellweger could easily lift the Memorial Cup, something that Mason McTavish could not do last season. Finally, I want to talk to you all about the Quebec League, because there's another couple defensemen that I've not talked about yet, but geez, I've got to now. Let's start with Tyson Hines, who could be the savior for the Ducks defense if he makes the team. If nothing else, he could be a savior for the Gulls defense. Yeah, the Gulls, by the way, they were just as crappy. They were just as bad on defense as the Ducks were. There were several times where the Gulls allowed 40 shots on goal. They did that several times this year. We saw that. Tyson Hines could save them all, because he got the Kevin Lowe Trophy in the Quebec League, which is awarded to the Quebec Junior League's top defensive defenseman. Yeah, that's right. The top defensive defenseman of the year. Imagine if the Ducks had someone like that was the top defenseman in anything, because they certainly didn't have that this season. However, and this is the little caveat here, Tyson Hines right now, best defenseman in the Quebec League. It is still the Quebec League. For him to be top in that league, that's great. And he did that while averaging a point a game for the Phoenix Sherbrooke, or Sherbrooke Phoenix, right now, averaging a point a game. A little bit more about Tyson Hines. If you recall, I had a whole thing about him last season. This was on the audio side when I talked about him, because this was back in the 2021 draft where I did a whole deep dive on Tyson Hines, and I really liked his defensive prowess even back then. He does pull off great moves and has always been just, you know, he's activated on the defensive end. He will not be back in juniors next season. This is his last year in juniors, his final season, because he turns 21 next season. He's already 20 right now. In 8 playoff games, he got 4 apples. That's it. But it's mostly about his defensive game. And we'll see if he can stop someone on the other side later this playoffs, because there's another defenseman in the Quebec League that is also doing well, and that is Tristan Luno, who got the Emile Bouchard Trophy for really killing it right now in that league. So, best defenseman. One of the best defensemen in the Quebec League right now. And by the way, the other nominees of that Bouchard Trophy was also Tyson Hines of Sherbrooke Phoenix and Frederic Brunet of the Victoriaville Tigers. Look, there are 2 award-winning defensemen for the Quebec League in the Duck system right now. Right now, I would say Tristan Luno is one of the top defensemen if it wasn't for Tyson Hines. And Tristan Luno, he's also probably not going to be back in juniors next season. In fact, I think I remember that he's not going to be back in juniors. He could be eligible for... I take that back. He has 1 more year of juniors left in him. But he just had 83 points in 65 games as a defenseman for the Gatineau Olympique in the Quebec League. Also good. Right now, 13 points in 10 games in the playoffs. And some of those assists have also been just really good. But you know what I like about Tristan Luno? Another good skating defenseman. Someone else that does get back on defense. Now, Tyson Hines is also an exceptional skater and gets back on defense with ease. Uses that active stick with ease. Tristan Luno, kind of the same way, but has a good forecheck and creates turnovers, which kind of results in easy assists or easy goals, where he's one on none. He's done that at least, from like watching the the Twitter videos. He's already done that a couple times this season, where he just swipes a puck away with a strong forecheck and gets an easy finish. So that's, again, someone that you would like to have on your Ducks squad. Not next season because he's still only 19 years old, another year left, but Tyson Hines, I could see him making a strong case to make the Ducks at some point. But I like all the defensemen that the Ducks have coming up. I love Zellweger. Mintyukov, he's going to be better than a lot of people thought. Tyson Hines could be a steal for a third-round pick. And Tristan Luno, who could be a steal for that late second-round pick. You never know how these late picks are going to wind up. But hey, you know what? Look at my boy Troy Terry. Another late draft pick, and look at him blossom to an all-star. That is kind of the hallmark of the Ducks, regardless of where they land. But now that they had the worst record, they're going to have that number 33 pick. They're going to have that number 65 pick. They're going to have first dibs in the second round, third round, etc. There's a lot of deep talent out there in this year's draft. I cannot wait to see what happens with the Ducks as far as defense, but I'm going to say what I've said the last couple years. Give it time. Have patience. And I know I said this last year, so I'm going to say it again. Have patience, but at the same time, let the kids play. I might be hashtagging that a lot this coming season, but hashtag let the kids play. Yeah, I'm going to repeat it over and over and over and over again. I know I hashtagged it a lot when Zegras was coming up and he was getting benched. I was hashtagging that a lot. When Drysdale was coming up, he was getting benched. And when McTavish was up and he wasn't getting played as much as he should. Let the kids play. Whoever the next coach of the Anaheim Ducks is, this is directly to you. Whoever's going to coach next, let the kids play. All right, that'll do it for this podcast. I've said my piece. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, ad-free on Amazon, and also on YouTube. You could follow me on Twitter, Komsa, at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter's at LO_Ducks. You could drop me a line via email. It's lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode later on, but in the meantime, thank you so much for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez, saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and ducks and baby ducks fly together.